morning and welcome to Rising. Of course, we have just a great show for you today on this Tuesday morning. Hello, Niall. I was reflecting actually that a milestone was passed by unacknowledged. My first time hosting Rising was 4 years ago in late June. Oh. So I've now been at this job, at this desk for 4 straight years.
I'm sorry we didn't mark your anniversary.
Yeah, where was my cake and hat?
Anniversary Rising cake, with the logo emblazoned upon it.
Do you remember the old the smiley face
yes,
he used to have reflected in the desk? Risey, I called him.
That was a shame to lose him. Maybe we'll get that in sometime in the near future. You never know. In the meantime, what is on your radar, Robbie?
Let's get to it. The moderate liberal faction of the Democratic Party just keeps getting bad news. Democratic leadership, in the persons of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, is temperamentally moderate, culturally progressive, and lukewarm at best on economic populism, which means they aren't exactly loved by the left. It turns out, however, that unique combination of beliefs is fairly unpopular not just with the left, but with the entire Democratic Party's base. Now, don't take my word for it. Even as mainstream, a liberal MSNBC host, Joe Scarborough, has noticed that socialist-friendly left progressives are destroying the more moderate voices in the party. People like Senator Bernie Sanders, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and of course Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist sensation, who easily defeated former Governor Andrew Cuomo to become the Democratic Party's New York City mayoral candidate. Here was Scarborough stating the problem for moderates quite plainly on Morning Joe.
The 3 most compelling figures, the mayoral candidate, Bernie Sanders, and AOC, the 3 most compelling figures since the election have been far left of, let's say, the mainstream of a lot of Americans. Why can't moderate Democrats, why can't conservative moderate Democrats like you make that same compelling message?
It's a very good question. Now, I have an answer. Morning Joe probably won't like it. Look, increasingly, there's just less and less room in the Democratic Party for moderate voters. Now, part of the problem, undoubtedly, is that the Democratic Party's elite leadership has failed catastrophically, time and time again, to deliver what its voters want. Now, say what you will about the Republican Party, but GOP leaders finally realize that the base loves Trump, there's no way around it, and wants elected members of the party to fall in line with him. Now, GOP leaders rarely try to thwart Trump directly. If they do work against him, it's cowardly, in secret. They know they cannot openly oppose Trump. The Democratic Party, on the other hand, is extremely reluctant to embrace its most popular standard bearers. We can go all the way back to 2016, of course, when the party pulled out all the stops to coronate Hillary Clinton as the candidate, even when rival Bernie Sanders proved unexpectedly popular. You know how that turned out. This time around, Democratic leadership steadfastly maintained no one should challenge Biden, debate Biden, or provide an opportunity to primary voters to select someone other than Biden. After Biden's infirmities were exposed, the party picked Kamala Harris, and she lost. You see the problem? Democratic elites just don't understand their voters. Now, it's true that not everyone who is part of the Democratic base wants economic populism or socialism, but the share that wants neoliberalism paired with cultural progressivism, well, I think that's shrinking every day. If you want to beat a Sanders or a Mamdani, you have to do better than a Clinton or a Cuomo. And as far as the New York mayoral primary goes, this should have been obvious. Cuomo's failures, frankly, they're even more apparent than Hillary Clinton's or Kamala Harris's. In recent memory, Cuomo resigned his office after a sexual misconduct scandal and a COVID deaths-related corruption scandal. And that's who Democratic elites wanted? They're probably right now to be concerned about the general electability of candidates like AOC and Mamdani, who have previously espoused views on crime, foreign policy, gender, all sorts of other issues that do place them, in my view, on the extreme left fringes, despite their relatively more appealing personalities and policy platforms, perhaps on other issues. But look, politics is about a lot more than policy. I wish it was just about policy, but it's about so much more. The Democratic Party's so-called moderates are failing a very basic likability test, and the ultimate beneficiary of their short-sightedness will be the eventual 2028 GOP nominee, who's presumably Vice President J.D. Vance. So I saw this clip, Ken Klippenstein shared it on Twitter, of Morning Joe, putting the question to a moderate Democrat, why do you people, our people, because I think Morning Joe is more affection for them, keep losing in head-to-head matches with these people who have far-left policy platforms? And I think it's a fair question. I think part of it is just the likability, is the personality, and then maybe it speaks to other issues as well, including just the failure of leadership to find appealing moderate candidates or to have even the trust of Democratic voters. I don't know. What do you think Democratic voters want?
Well, I mean, I think Democratic voters want pretty bold proposals and bold rhetoric to go with it. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the show as well. One of the key points here, I think, is people on the left actually believe in what they're saying. And therefore, I think they often make more compelling messengers than people on the centre left or of the sort of Morning Joe type. Now, of course, people can argue about whether the ideas are right or not, but the conviction, I think, does give them a greater impetus in the way they put that. The other point I would make about the sort of Morning Joe style of moderation is it often gets into that kind of rich guy's liberalism, which is essentially socially liberal and economically conservative, and there isn't.
Those are my views, right here.
Yeah, exactly. And the Libertarian Party does fantastically in general elections, as you know. I mean, the point is that there is a much bigger market, I think, for the kind of economic populism that some people on the left are putting forward, and we see it in opinion polls. Should the minimum wage be increased federally to $15 an hour? 65% support in a 2023 poll. Is it the government's responsibility to make sure all Americans have health care? 62% from Gallup last year. Should taxes be raised on big businesses and corporations? 63% yes in a Pew Research poll this year. So there is, I think, a market for that. And the kind of Michael Bloombergian kind of version is not, in fact, particularly widely desired, certainly in the Democratic Party.
That's the key point. I think it is not widely desired in the Democratic Party, or at least the fired up Democratic base who's going to show up in primaries. That's the problem. Those kinds of people, warmed over neoliberalism is just not appealing at all. On the overall point that, I always get shown that map of the four quadrants, and there's like no voters in the quadrant that would roughly be my politics, the socially liberal, although I don't really like to describe myself that way, but socially tolerant, government not involved in social life and government not involved in economically life, and that there's not very many voters. That I will push back. That I finally did a little bit of research on how that result was manufactured. To get at that, the questions that lead you away from that quadrant are I think, very, very misleading. They require you to have given responses to end up in that quadrant that I would, for instance, have never indicated. It would there are things about I forget exactly what they were. Something about
the social side or the economic side.
And it's a confusion of both. Like you had to say, do you think? You had to commit to some very fairly redistributionist policies to even end up in there. It's like I think it was a very poor person's understanding of what a libertarian ideology is, and that is why you didn't have many voters testing into it.
Well, if they understood libertarianism, they'd be flocking to your banner.
Maybe I'll do a radar on that topic a little bit later, so we can more fully delve into it.
Sure, absolutely.
Up next, Owen Jones stuns Piers Morgan when discussing October 7th, and President Trump just got a formal Nobel Peace Prize nomination from Benjamin Netanyahu. Niall will have a lot to say about that. Stay tuned.
British journalist Owen Jones, who has been a vocal critic of Israel's operations in Gaza, is in the middle of a furore, and it's not really of his own making. Critics cited a clip from his recent appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored, which they cast as him defending Hamas. But a fuller clip tells a very different story. Let's watch.
If I had said to you, in 2023, 240 Palestinians had been killed that year by the Israeli state, including 40 children, what else was Hamas supposed to do on the 7th of October? What would you say?
Are you justified?
No, that's the point. I'm saying you would say correctly, there was never any excuse for war crimes. This is an outrageous question for you to even ask me. From the very beginning, Israeli leaders and officials made clear they were going to commit a genocide. They made clear they saw no distinction between civilians and people.
Now, here was Piers Morgan responding to Owen Jones' remarks.
Yeah, but responding to a terror attack isn't a war crime. What has happened in the last few months, to me, has now crossed the line between legitimate self-defence to the worst terror attack of modern times against the Jewish people, has gone now past that into, and clearly from what people like Smodrich is saying, has gone into a plan, it seems to me, by the government to cleanse Gaza of Palestinians, which is a war crime.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump hosted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House on Monday. The two leaders discussed working toward reaching a ceasefire agreement with Hamas and indicated some progress on an unpopular effort to relocate Palestinians out of Gaza. Here's Netanyahu speaking to reporters. Let's watch.
If people want to stay, they can stay. But if they want to leave, they should be able to leave. It shouldn't be a prison. It should be an open place and give people a free choice. We're working with the United States very closely about finding countries that will seek to realize what they always say, that they want to give the Palestinians a better future.
Netanyahu also said he had sent a letter to the Nobel Prize Committee to nominate President Donald Trump for the Peace Prize. All right, lots of elements of this to discuss. Let's briefly touch on Owen Jones. Yeah, I saw the shorter clip, and it was a little bit misleading. And now that I've seen the content, I thought he was endorsing the view that, well, the Palestinians had, or the Hamas had nothing to do but respond in the way they did, given the atrocities against them. And then I would have said, well, then that just leads to the Israelis say the same thing. But that was exactly the point he was making.
It was. He was making the point that it is not, you can't commit war crimes and say some other injustice preceding that done to you justifies them. And the clip was very misleadingly edited, because even before what we just played, the literal quote from him is, "You would find this question offensive if I put it to you, if I had said to you," and then the more inflammatory thing that he was saying. So he was very obviously presenting a hypothetical.
Piers has been pretty critical of
what
Israel. Honestly, I rarely say this, but his views on the issue are basically mine exactly. I was, supportive of, supportive is the wrong word, but understanding of Israel retaliating after a terrorist attack and now thinking the government has just gone well beyond is basically my view. Now, in terms of the relocation of Palestinians, we might disagree on this. I think it is... Obviously, they should not be forced out of the Gaza Strip, but if they want to go elsewhere and other countries want to take them, I don't see why that should be disdained particularly.
Well, I don't think that if put like that, it should be disdained, but I think you have to bear in mind the context of this is one in which Netanyahu has repeatedly ruled out a two-state solution, and there are people significantly more extreme than him, and I regard him as pretty extreme, within his cabinet. So you have people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, the National Security Minister, who was convicted in Israeli courts in a previous era of terrorism. Bezalel Smotrich, who's an extreme, by any reasonable yardstick, settler activist. And one of the reasons that this is such a big issue right now is that the Defense Minister, Israel Katz, just within the past 48 hours came up with this, frankly, obscene proposal to corral the Palestinians into some sort of settlement that they couldn't leave on the ruins of Rafah. Something that, to all intents and purposes, is a concentration camp. Really, well, I mean, that's what he's talking about.
That's why I don't want to confine them there. I also don't want to push them out, or I don't want to push them on country. Jordan has taken some Palestinians, doesn't really want to take more. I mean, this is the problem: is that no country, including theoretically supportive or similarly ideologically aligned Islamic countries, don't want to take a large number of refugees, embedded among them a terrorist group. This is the central conundrum here, but their homes have been totally destroyed, been completely wiped out. The humanitarian approach is we have to rebuild it, or we have to find a place for them.
But their homes have been destroyed by the people who are now offering to resettle them. So by definition, they are pushing them out because they have bombed them for 21 months indiscriminately and killed about 57,000 of them. That's the problem.
It's not an improvement to say, okay, we destroyed it. Good luck to you now. is not really remain there.
But it's their home, though.
Well, I'm not forcing them out. I'm just, that might be, it's up to them. I don't know what is best for them. If they want to go elsewhere, and importantly, another country wants to take them, which is, again, the piece of this puzzle that will not be resolved because no one does want to take them.
But the primary reason that no one wants to take them is that Arab countries, quite rightly, don't want to be complicit in the destruction of the idea of a Palestinian nation by absorbing them into their own populations.
Don't want to take
the
them
home of the Palestinians is in Palestine. And that is where they have the right to live and to remain and to have self-government. And those are the rights that have been thwarted for them for decades by the respective governments of Israel.
Yeah, they can stick to, that's fine. They can stick to that attitude and see where it gets them. Or we could be a little bit forward thinking, and that would be, I think, best for the people in the region. But
I don't accept that it is forward thinking to just be complicit in the destruction of a people. I don't see how that is forward thinking.
I'm not complicit and I'm not for it, but it's happened. We can't snap our fingers and pretend it didn't happen.
But your argument appears to be that Jordan or Egypt or whomever should take more of them in.
Not that they should, but if they wanted to and the Palestinians wanted to go there, that would be fine. And in fact might be a better situation. Now, if they don't want to take them, and I think the reason they don't want to take them, regardless of what they say publicly, is that they don't want to absorb a poor refugee population that among them is people with a proclivity, some of them, not all of them, obviously, with a proclivity for terrorism. No one wants to absorb that. They worry about the stability of their own governments and their own countries. They won't say that out loud, but that's actually how they feel.
I think the reason that they don't want to take in Palestinian refugees is that they don't think the Palestinians should be made refugees a second time by the destruction of Gaza.
Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump. I don't think he should get a Nobel Peace Prize, but Barack Obama, a Nobel Peace Prize for nothing. Absolutely nothing.
We're giving people hope, Robby.
For hope. I found that outrageous, and so by the low standards of Barack Obama getting a Nobel Peace Prize, we should all have one. It should be like the Time Person of the Year 2007 or whatever.
Well, at least now that Netanyahu's nominated him, he'll never get it anyway, so I'm by proxy happy enough. Anyway, next up, Fox's Peter Doocy grills Karoline Leavitt over the Epstein Memo recently released, with many still outraged about the findings. Stay with us.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
Well. Attorney General Pam Bondi's catching heat for those comments that she made on Fox in February of this year.
Fox News' Peter Doocy grilled White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt at the briefing yesterday over what Bondi said. Let's watch.
News. Go ahead. John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars.
Back in February, Bondi also faced backlash for her disappointing release of Phase 1 of the Epstein files. A handful of right-wing influencers were handed binders and posed for photos. Files contained nothing revealing whatsoever. One of those influencers, podcaster Liz Wheeler, wrote on X yesterday, I'm supposed to be on vacation, but it's time to fire Pam Bondi.
Meanwhile, journalist Michael Tracy, with a hint of humour, wrote on X, Epstein theology is just like any other mystical dogma. No countervailing evidence could ever disprove its core precepts. It now lives in a realm beyond falsification and traditional modes of empirical reasoning. The FBI might as well try to disprove reincarnation or astrology.
Many on social media have also pointed to an oddity in the surveillance footage of Epstein's cell that the Justice Department released. If you look at the time on the bottom left corner of your screen, you will see the clock jump from 11:58 a.m. right until noon. An entire 2 minutes, a minute rather, of the footage is missing, which has, of course, sparked some theories. So we're still wondering what the truth is. We discussed this a little bit yesterday.
We did.
I appreciate the anger from people in MAGA world. I think it is very justified. I guess everyone who covered this story was treated like suckers by some of the people installed by Trump, by, frankly, Dan Bongino and certainly Pam Bondi and others. The whole binder thing now seems just like an utterly toxic, disgusting display. Phase 1, that was just like trying to set up a sequel, like a trilogy or something, for when they were going to provide no new information whatsoever. The damning thing is using the phrase, or going along with the phrase, client list. Look, if there's no specific document or no additional documents showing that these are the people he was trying to blackmail, then they never should have allowed us to believe that that was the case. They should have been honest from the get-go and said, no, you guys we kind of already know the full story. It involves Prince Andrew and some other people. People in the administration let the public believe that there was more information and that would be coming out. Now it's not coming out either because there is no more information, which a lot of people don't believe, or because they don't want to share with you what they know for a variety of reasons, because it could be embarrassing to them, it could be embarrassing to Pam Bondi specifically, it could be an intelligence-related thing, but I'm furious.
Yeah, well, I think understandably so. I think that Pam Bondi quote that we played right at the top is pretty damning in light of the way things have developed, because this thing that was sitting on her desk has mysteriously disappeared or failed to exist all of a sudden several months later. So obviously people are going to have questions. And the Epstein thing, yes, there are some conspiracies around it in the sense of people claiming to know for sure things that none of us can know for sure. But I don't think it is a conspiracy to say this is massively suspicious that you have this guy who is just a predator on a huge scale and connected with extremely wealthy and extremely prominent and influential
and extremely
people.
Wealthy himself,
right?
Evading jail time
Right.
in a way that is, or having a very lenient deal, and then being able to resume high-profile association. Usually they come down pretty hard on people who are, correctly caught with child pornography or doing things of that nature.
Yeah.
You go to jail.
Right.
This guy got to come and go as he wants. So that's what the suspicious thing is. I appreciate Michael Tracy's penchant for strong takes. He basically wrote a long Twitter thread saying, yeah, the reason you're not getting any more information is there's no there. Most of the accusations come from this one woman, Virginia Giuffre, who he says is completely mentally unstable and offered no further substantiation, and accused people, including Alan Dershowitz, that she later had to retract, and that there's just no there, and she's mentally ill, and it's very sad she killed herself, and that's why there's no more information, which is an interesting take. I appreciate him, not always saying what people want to hear. But
he's welcome to have whatever take he wishes, but it is highly suspicious that Epstein functioning in the center as the nexus of all of these influential people. It's just like, oh, well, that's what happened. And, he got those sentences because he somehow deserved leniency. And he knew all these people, but he didn't try to capitalize on those connections. And he killed himself, and there we go. That's not going to satisfy too many people.
There is some real anger at the administration right now from people, again, MAGA world, even some libertarian people like Dave Smith, libertarian of my ideological bent, who endorsed Trump and argued that we should vote for Trump. Between this and Iran and some of the other policies, there's a lot of frustration from my corner of politics with the administration. Coming up, Democrats are getting dark. Fight dirty. That's what Democrats are allegedly urging their representatives to do. According to Axios, Democratic congressional members are being told to beat back against Republicans, even if it means breaking the rules.
Axios reports speaking with over 24 House Democrats, one of whom said, quote, "We've got people who are desperately wanting us to do something. No matter what we say, they want more." Liberal voters are displaying their anger at town halls, accusing lawmakers of not doing enough, going so far as calling for blood, one lawmaker told the outlet.
Reactions have been plentiful insane, the NRCC posted, adding, quote, there needs to be blood, actual quote from Democrat House members describing what their deranged-based demands. These extreme, violent, lawless Democrats have completely lost their minds. And the Twitchy team posted, quote, violent? You don't say. Gosh, wonder why.
So I'm going to have to clarify something here, I think, in the interests of fairness. The quote from the anonymous Democratic lawmaker was supporters telling him or her, quote, what we really need to do is be willing to get shot when inspecting ICE facilities. The NRCC, I think it was, pulled or clipped that quote to imply, I think, that they were suggesting Democrats, presumably, I don't know, shooting people in the Trump administration or shooting Republicans or something. That isn't what the suggestion was. The suggestion was that whoever this unnamed Democrat is was being told you need to dramatize the situation by being willing to be shot if you're inspecting an ICE facility.
Right. I mean, fair enough. If you're, I don't know what kind of activism, or, I mean, in order to get shot in one of these facilities, you need to be attacking the police, you need to be, which would, invite incidental or accidental harm to third parties, but it is not good advice. No one should engage in activism with the intention of being violently harmed or provoking the police to respond in such a way. It's very, now it comes from some anonymous person, so it can be discarded as that.
Yes, but, well, no one should be trying to get shot. That is true. There is a very broad history in civil rights struggles of dramatizing the struggle in order to show the fundamental injustice of the system. So Rosa Parks didn't expect that she'd be let sit in the front seat of the bus. It was intended to expose the injustice.
She didn't
John Lewis
resist being. They were then arrested and taken away. She didn't try to. These people did not, punch the police as they were.
No, but the point is that you elicit an unjust response to demonstrate the injustice of the system. John Lewis didn't expect that the Alabama state troopers were going to applaud him when he crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge. The assumption was there was going to be resistance to that, which would expose the brutality with which the civil rights movement was treated. So it is part of that history, I think. It's not saying go and shoot some Republicans. It is saying dramatize what we believe is an unjust circumstance, as has been done in previous phases of movements for social justice.
Yes, I would say it's not exactly a direct comparison. Those were protests against abject, on the books, racially discriminatory policies that now we all oppose. Obviously, not everyone opposed them at the time, or they wouldn't have existed in the first place. I don't like everything immigration authorities are doing or the way some of these deportations are going about. I don't, but racial discrimination as policy, which I think should not exist at all, and I don't think immigration enforcement should not exist at all. Most people don't think immigration enforcement should not exist at all. Most people do want, in fact, majorities of Americans, a strong majority, it's Trump's best issue, do want deportation and immigration enforcement to some degree. Now, I don't think there's a broad public appetite to send immigration authorities door to door, arresting everyone who is in this country illegally, even if you've been here for 30 years and have never committed any crime and aren't bothering anyone. I don't want to do that. There are some conservatives who want to do that. Stephen Miller clearly does want to do that. I don't want to do that, and I think most people don't, but most people do want the arrest and incarceration and deportation of a lot of illegal immigrants for a variety of reasons. So I don't think it's. I wouldn't advise Democrats I wouldn't advise them to violently resist anyway, but cause scenes over every single one of those things.
One can certainly debate the politics of it. I think that what is being proposed there by this unnamed person talking to an unnamed lawmaker is hyperbolic, but I see it in the tradition that I just outlined. To me, though, one of the things that I do have some degree of sympathy with the Democratic lawmakers on is they do actually have quite limited leverage. I mean, they don't obviously have the White House, but they're also in the minority in both chambers of Congress. the stuff you can do in that situation to thwart an administration's policies is quite limited. And I do get, I think, what was the underpinning to the Axios story, which was lawmakers getting a bit frustrated because an activist base assumes they can just stop Trump from doing anything. And they can't really. I mean, the courts, I think, have
That's what I was
stepped
going to
in
say.
to some extent.
Yes, the most successful opposition to what Trump is doing is coming from court challenges, from activist groups of a legal orientation. I mean, the ACLU type organizations are the ones actually frustrating Trump and delaying and, not winning every time, but winning some of the battles. There's a limited role for lawmakers in that process, which is why, I mean, if they had more appealing, charismatic figures who are just going out there, attending rallies, trying to maybe raise money for legal organizations, that's probably the best thing they can do. And obviously some Democratic figures are doing that. Yeah. But from a party political leadership in the House and Senate, that's just not really. No. And then of course, because it's not really possible, they get then lambasted for not doing something that they don't really have the power to do. They should hold fake like MAGA influencers, right? The phase one of the Trump-resistant binders that they'll distribute to Harry Sisson and Dean Withers and the Krasenstein brothers and all those people. Yeah, maybe that would be the thing that turns the tide. Yes. Or they could just win the midterms, whichever. We'll see. Next up, great news for travelers who hate taking their shoes off at airports. Free at last. The day is here. I'm so excited. I can't wait to talk about it. Stay with us. Great news for travelers like myself who get very annoyed with silly TSA protocols. You no longer will have to take your shoes off at certain airports. At least that's what sources are telling multiple news outlets. Gate Access, a travel newsletter, was first to report the news. Now, the TSA has not officially changed their policy, but sources are saying the TSA has stopped requiring travelers to take their shoes off at some airports. A TSA spokesperson did tell the New York Times TSA and DHS are always exploring new and innovative ways to enhance the passenger experience, and our strong security posture. Any potential updates to our security process will be issued through official channels, however. Caleb Harmon Marshall, the author of the Gate Access newsletter, told the Times in a statement, "Travelers should feel relieved knowing that technology has advanced so significantly that TSA officers can detect threats while wearing shoes. In the old days, this wasn't the case." You are very excited about this story, Robby. Yes, I am. Tell me all about it. Tell me why you're so thrilled. You know that I do not like the TSA very much. You're not a fan of security theater. It is security theater. What we have done in the last 20 years to how we have transformed the process of flying or checking in for flights is just utterly ridiculous. It was fear drove us to enshrine, to put into law all of these policies that are connected to safety in only the most abstract ways. Specifically, the taking off the shoes thing dates to about 2006 or 7 in response to the shoe bomber. You remember him? I do. I actually didn't remember his name. You were able to come up with it. Well, because he was English, perhaps. So that was part. Richard Reid was the man in question. Important to note that his bomb did not work and was not successful. Did not detonate a transatlantic flight. Because of that, we've all been taking off our shoes. And, people have a difficult time assigning, every time something goes wrong, it's natural to go, oh my God, what could have been done to prevent this? How insane you are to just let people not check people's shoes. How can you do that? Well, okay. The cost, the difficulty, the headache of checking everybody's shoes, everybody flying for 20 years, think of the exorbitant amount of weight. And I know you can't, put a dollar amount on a human life, although you actually can. It's like insurance actuators do. Save you from yourself and get you back off the let's put a dollar amount of everyone's life. Right, but we don't consider the lives lost by people, for instance, driving to their destination instead of flying because now it's more expensive and more costly. More people die in car accidents than plane crashes. Driving is by several orders of magnitude more dangerous than flying. In fact, driving is one of the most dangerous things you can do. Sure. There's almost more car deaths than anything else, up there with gun deaths and cancer and things and heart disease in America. So if this was absolutely necessary to make us safer, maybe we would do it. There's very little evidence that it is. So many of the whole plane hijackings, locking the cockpit doors was a great innovation after 9/11 that has made it almost impossible, probably, to hijack planes anymore. So that's a great innovation. The rest of it is security theater, and I am so glad we're not going to do this part of it anymore.
I don't really disagree with very much of that at all. I mean, in a free society, you have to constantly try to evaluate the increased security that you obtain by doing X, Y, or Z, and the cost of that. I mean, we could, for example, protect lawmakers by never having them ever go out in public and having every public proceeding behind locked doors.
Right, we could lower the speed limit when you're driving to 5 miles per hour. Right. Fine, if it takes you 20 times longer to get to your destination, but and we would save lives that way. Right. We would save lives in terms of car crash deaths, but we would inconvenience everyone so much that we would cost lives in terms of how long it takes you to get to the hospital or the grocery store or whatever. We obviously wouldn't do that. I mean, these thought experiments are useless to say, well, there are limits on how much we're willing to limit human behavior.
And the other thing I think particularly about the airports is something that bothers me is the apparent arbitrariness of it a lot of the time. And even in this report, I noticed that the phrasing of it was some airports won't require you to take your shoes off. So, like, why some and not all? And I mean, this happens on a much lower level all the time. Often if I go home to Ireland, there's a particular airport where the amount of like a liquid that you can take seems smaller than other places. So who's deciding that? You know, have we decided that this amount of my contact lens solution is potentially explosive there but not there? Well, it seems a ludicrous.
100%. It gets even more ridiculous. You know, if the line backs up too much, oftentimes then they go, okay, everybody just come. They wave people through. Right. So they're not. So the screenings are random. Right. Also, this is actually my personal pet peeve. Is not even the shoes. It's the. It's now about 50% of the time. Some of the machines, when you're going through airport security, you're supposed to take out of your backpack. You got to take out your laptop. I'm usually traveling with my Nintendo Switch. You got to take that out. Sure. Have them in different bins. And go through. Some of the machines, you leave everything in your backpack. And it's about 50-50. And even at some airports, they have this line is this machine and this line is this machine. This has happened to me at DCA all the time. So you have to ask, like, do I leave my laptop in? And they look at you like you're a moron who's never flown before. But there's no way to know which machine it is.
Exactly.
That drives me crazier than anything. If it was just the same way every time, I would be fine with it. But
I believe the machines that let you keep your laptop in are more expensive, however.
Yeah.
So you say you would probably prefer to fewer taxpayer dollars being spent.
Well, and also, I swear to God, even when it goes through that one, half the time, maybe not half the time, but plenty of the time it stops, or they take it away and oh, now we got to go through your things. I'm like, well, I would have rather just taken them out so we didn't have to do this. Yeah. I hate the sexually aggressive, in my view, pat-downs that do if you fail that machine, which that's happened to me on multiple trips. I do not enjoy watching government employees abuse old women, looking for bombs on their purses. It's just totally ridiculous to me.
I mean, I think I'm not really defending that. I guess that happens if someone sets off something going through the magnometers and whatever. And obviously we have an interest in people not bringing weaponry on board planes. But yeah, I mean, I think that there is an issue.
I won't say it because I don't want to get this video in trouble on YouTube, but it is perfectly possible to assemble an incendiary device in the airport after you get through security. I won't explain how to do it, but you can Google it. It can be done.
Can't believe I'm going to have to save you from yourself twice in 1 second, but here we are.
Oh, all right. 2 liberal former cable news stars floated a conspiracy theory, perhaps, about Trump in the 2026 midterms. We'll tell you who. Ousted ex-MSNBC host Joy Reid is convinced that free and fair elections in America are they no more. She recently told a far-left writer, Wajahat Ali, that President Trump will interfere with the 2026 elections. Take a look.
I think it's insane, honestly, to just assume we're going to have normal elections next year. The way Trump is behaving, he's not acting like somebody who worries that his party will lose power, or that even if somehow we had normal elections and Democrats took control of either house of this House or the Senate, he's not acting like somebody who's worried about the consequences of that. This is somebody who is behaving as an autocrat because they don't anymore believe. He said it during the election, I don't need your votes anymore. And he doesn't. I don't think Trump intends to leave office. I'm very clear about that. I think he intends to stay in office like Putin till he dies.
Former CNN anchor Jim Acosta suggested broadly similar things. Speaking on his own show, Acosta answered a question from a viewer about whether he, Acosta, is worried there will be tampering or, quote, monkeying around from Team Trump in the 2026 midterms. This was his response.
With what they're trying to pull these days, they don't want accountability. They don't want Democrats getting the gavels in the House and the Senate, be able to hold hearings and start impeachment proceedings and so on.
A veteran Democratic strategist, I believe that refers to James Carville, is adding his 2 cents.
I don't put anything past him. Nothing.
I think those comments from Joy Reid were a bit unhinged even by her standards. And also, I was told that election denialism is, the foremost of crimes. What is Trump is going to leave office. The election will not be, there will be elections held, and they are behaving the way they are because they think their policies are popular, and some of their policies are popular, and they think they will be fine in the ballot box for that reason. They're not going to not hold elections. They're not going to do anything of that. Trump will leave office at the end of this term, and J.D. Vance most likely, or someone else, but probably J.D. Vance, will run to succeed him, and that's how it will go.
So I probably would not have put the argument in the way that Joy Reid put it, but I don't think it is, to use your word, unhinged. The reason I don't think it is unhinged is Donald Trump has never said he would accept the results of an election. He has never said that. In 2016, there was a debate with Hillary Clinton, and he famously said that he will tell you at the time, I will keep you in suspense as to whether he would accept the results of that election.
I think he said he'd accept it if he thought it was fair. You're right, he didn't
No, he said that in 2024. In 2016, he said, I will tell you at the time, I'll keep you in suspense. An argument, and this marks how the Republican Party has moved, a comment that drew condemnation from Lindsey Graham and from Senator Jeff Flake, who has now subsequently gone from the Senate, who said that that was beyond the pale. Trump then, at a rally, said, I will totally accept the results if I win. 2020, we have talked about a number of times. Trump lost the election. He tried to get, in Georgia, for example, people to fraudulently award him the election. He incited an insurrection on false grounds, and once back in power again, most recently, granted clemency to the insurrectionists. In 2024, he was similarly equivocal about whether he would accept an election. So you come at that, and the obvious conclusion to draw is Donald Trump doesn't actually believe in democracy as we commonly understand it. If someone doesn't believe in democracy and holds the levers of power, it is not unhinged to suggest that they will monkey around, as the quote was in the Acosta segment, with the election.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't want to get into another argument about 2020. I guess I would just point out his efforts to contest the election results were legal, were court challenges in nature that, again, I'm not defending, I don't think were good ideas, didn't get him very far, not a kind of, like actual refusal to leave the building. I don't know what, he might file lawsuits on behalf of the election results, as could both parties do that. I would point out that Joy Reid herself has been one of the most aggressive promoters of the idea that the 2016 results were questionable due to Russian interference or Russian social media behavior or connections between the Russian campaign, Russia and the Trump campaign. I don't know. This seems like just firing up people to be panicked for no reason. I mean, wait till it happens. I think the midterms will be probably normal. Democrats could win, but what does she say? She's saying if Republicans somehow hold the House, that will mean it's illegitimate because Trump messed with it. Isn't she inviting her viewers to reach that conclusion? Even though, to my mind, it's an open. It could go either way. It's a closely held.
I wouldn't really agree with that characterization of what she's saying. I think she's saying that she believes it is important to be aware of the possibility of some sort of meddling being done. I should also say as well, in terms of Trump's history of refusing to accept election results, that is not even him condemning the evil Democrats. In 2016, and this is admittedly going back a while, people forget Ted Cruz beat Trump in the Iowa caucuses, the first contest in that year, whereupon Trump instantly turned around and said that Cruz had illegally stolen the caucuses. This is a person
He's
who
a sore
doesn't
loser.
believe...
There's no way around it. He's a sore loser.
Well, he's not, but he doesn't even acknowledge that he's a loser. That's the fundamental problem. He believes that any election which he loses should be cast as fraudulent by its very nature. And that's one of the reasons why he's such a dangerous character.
Well, we've got another minute, I think, to discuss this, even though
Any other elections to discuss?
I've had to say. What should we say about the Jim Acosta part of it? I guess that was less sensational remarks.
It was, and Carville typically says, I quite enjoy Carville, but he's somebody who says, pretty inflammatory things just as a matter of course.
Who's the audience? Are these people getting a lot of attention?
I don't know.
Are they getting a good? Is this the kind of porn for the resistance or something? Is this what they're looking out for? Are they leaving? Maybe they are. Maybe they're tuning out of MSNBC and CNN in order to follow the ex-anchors to platforms where they're more free to just say whatever crazy thing comes to mind?
Well, I don't know. I haven't honestly looked at the numbers for either Joy Reid or Jim Acosta on YouTube or whatever. One thing
it would not surprise me if they're higher than the networks they left, to be perfectly honest.
Possibly. One thing that does interest me when I look at YouTube numbers is the Bulwark, which is essentially, how would you describe it, a Never Trump organization? Yes. They do very strong numbers now, whether that is purely liberals and Democrats wanting to hear what they, the former Republicans blasting Trump or not. But there's obviously a market
for that.
Their YouTube
numbers are really good. Why aren't your thunderous Trump condemnations getting us as much traffic and attention, Niall? I blame you.
Because we have a very Trump-friendly audience that I haven't been able to lure to my side of the ad.
That does it for us today on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can find podcasts. See you later.